Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GDDV 100 Game Theory 1. My name is Kasanas. Guys, last week we talked about the ideas of design thinking, and we talked about different methodologies, game methodologies, design methodologies that you can use in order to create your game. This week we're going to talk about flow states and immersion. Particularly, we're going to talk about flow states, player immersion, and how to affect immersion. All right, everyone, let's get started. So let's start off with flow states. And this is something very important. If you remember, if you go back to the original definitions we discussed, none of them really talked about the word fun. If you think about a game, you often think about the word fun, right? Games are supposed to be fun. But none of the definitions we talked about really included that particular word. Really what we want to talk about today is what players experience. That's what the flow states are, what players experience when they play games. So in the 1970s, there was a psychologist named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I hope I got that right. And he created the idea of flow. That doesn't mean how well a player moves through the game. It's about psychological states that a player will enter into when they are playing a video game or otherwise engage. Not strictly video games, but otherwise engage within a particular task. And what Mihai really discovered was that the difficulty of a task compared to the skill of the person who's trying to complete that task will have a huge effect on how well that task is complete and the feeling that the player is, or the person who's completing the task is going to have. If a task is too easy, then the person is going to find it really boring, they're going to become bored, and they're going to lose interest in what they're doing. If a task is way too difficult, the person will end up having anxiety towards that particular task. Ultimately, they may give up on it. And lastly, if the person's skill at a particular task is matched to the difficulty of the task, that's when the person will enter into the flow states. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is an example of the flow channel. Basically, if you're above the flow channel, then everything is too hard, it's too challenging for you, and you'll experience anxiety. If you are below the flow channel, then things are too easy and you're going to become bored. And you'll notice that it's not just strictly a straight line that runs through the origin and up towards the top of the screen. Instead, it's a space, and that space between is called the flow channel. So a task can be a little bit harder or a little bit easier, but as long as it's proportional really to your skill, then those ups and downs within that task, the difficulty of that task, is going to make this more interesting and keep you better embedded within the flow channel. Obviously, you can't have things that are always exactly proportional to precisely what you've done, right? Precisely to your skill level. So that channel itself means that you can move up and down within the channel. You will still remain within the flow states. So Csikszentmihalyi suggested that while in these states, people are going to experience very particular emotions and feelings. Those come down to an extreme focus on a task, a sense of active control, merging of action and awareness, loss of self-awareness, distortion of the experience of time, and the experience of a task being the only necessary justification for continuing with it. And that's kind of what he discovered. Now, if you think about your experience playing a game, you may have found that you've had this occur in your lifetime, that you have had these different states happen to you, that these different feelings happen with you. If I look back on the first time that I ever played Minecraft, this is my own experience. Originally, when I was working at a game studio when Minecraft came out, and all of our coders were playing Minecraft, and I remember looking at the game as an artist at the time. I remember looking at the game and thinking, no one is ever going to play that game. That game looks ugly, and no one is ever going to play it. So I dismissed Minecraft for a long time. I completely dismissed it. Not a game that anyone would play. And obviously, I was wrong, right? Lots of people have played it and continue to play it today. Now, the first time when I was finally convinced to actually play Minecraft, I was working at a studio on a film, actually. And some of the other animators had came to me and they said, hey, we have a Minecraft server if you'd like to join. And I was new to the studio. I thought, I might as well start making friends right away. So I agreed to join the server, and I went home and I purchased Minecraft, and I watched one or two videos about how to stay alive at night, and I joined the server that night, and I started playing. I thought, hey, this is pretty enjoyable. I was getting lost in time, and before I knew it, it was 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I thought, okay, well, if I stop now and I eat my dinner, I'm not really hungry, but if I eat my dinner, I'll have lots of time to do other stuff. And then I continued to play for a little bit, and I looked up again, and it's midnight now. Okay, it's getting pretty late. Still not really hungry, which is weird. But I should really get to bed. I have to go to work. My new job, right? New studio. Got to go to work. And then at about 3 o'clock, I realized, okay, now it's getting really late, and I'm going to have to call in sick tomorrow because there's no way that I'm going to be able to perform the tasks I need to be able to perform at work. So this is not something I'm recommending that you do if you're watching these videos. Obviously, do your job, you guys. But this happens, and we know what happens, right? I entered into these flow states. I remained within the flow state. I lost complete understanding of time. I was no longer being influenced by external needs like my need to eat or anything like that. I kept the job, so guys, don't worry. I still had that job, and I was able to finish the film. I was working on Resident Evil Redemption at the time. So that film came out, didn't get delayed because of my day off. But yeah, that's what happened. So I bet you if you look back in your own experience, you'll find a time when this happened to you. Maybe it was through a game or through a movie or something like that where you just realize, wait, wow, the time just flew by. I can't believe I've been playing this for 6 hours, right? This happens to all of us. This is the flow states. Okay, so it was great. It's great to talk about flow states. And it's not that people don't talk about flow states anymore, but there's another word that's kind of taken away from the idea of flow states. Designers will still talk in terms of flow states, but the much more common word to hear now is the idea of immersion. And immersion is a big buzzword when it comes to games, right? And we hear about these things like immersive environments and gameplay and immersive character development and all of these things that cause someone to become immersed within their game. But what exactly does that mean? What exactly does immersion mean? Well, just like the flow states, the idea of immersion is a state of being, an emotional state that our players enter into. And the amount of time that a player can remain immersed within a particular game can vary. The amount of immersion that they have will vary. It can be a few seconds long, so we have a few moments of immersion, or it could be hours and hours and hours, right? And it's stimuli that's offered by the task or the game that the player's playing that will draw them into this immersive state. Now, in 2004, Emily Brown and Paul Cairns co-authored a paper called A Grounded Investigation of Game Immersion. And in that paper, they identified 3 states of immersion. They identified engagement, engrossment, and total immersion. And these 3 states are each deeper than the next. One is deeper than the next. Engagement is light engagement, all the way down to total immersion. With engagement, the first stage, it's a very light immersion. The player is mildly immersed within the game, and they can be drawn further into this immersive level by simple things that occur within the game. Something that causes a little bit more concentration. So an interesting sound or something they're listening for or a visual that they're experiencing for the first time will cause immersion, will cause engagement. Starting of a new dialogue, a compelling dialogue where they want to hear this stuff, they're going to concentrate on that dialogue. This is going to cause and enter into an engagement state or become more deeply entwined in this immersion state. And lastly, there's tons of other stuff too, but introduction to a new mechanic can also cause engagement. These aren't the only 3 things that are going to cause a player to become immersed, obviously. So the introduction of a new mechanic where the player is now concentrating on something that they're learning for the first time, that's going to cause the player to become immersed within their game environment. The next level, the deeper level, second level, is engrossment. And the second stage, again, it requires more stimuli, not something simple like a new sound. It requires more stimuli in order to reach this particular level of engrossment or immersion. In this state, the player will last longer in their immersed state. So an example could be by increasing the difficulty of a game, but still maintaining your flow states. You still have to maintain the the difficulty of the game and the player's ability to complete the task, right? If you do that, they're gonna move right out of this immersed state. They're gonna become anxious with the game and they're gonna want to leave. But if you maintain that difficulty proportional to the player's skill, they're going to become more immersed in the game. They're going to enter into engrossment, as an example. And the third and final state or immersion state that they can enter into is total immersion. And this is the final one. This is deep immersion. A player becomes completely immersed in the game. They start to ignore external stimuli, right? They're going to ignore their hunger pains. They're going to ignore how cold it is in a room. They're going to tune all of that out. They're going to completely lose track of time. We just talked about this, how I lost hours of my life that first day that I played Minecraft. This was total immersion. I was completely lost in this game. And again, it's requiring all of the player's concentration. It's to maintain this particular state of immersion. Now, it's great that we can talk academically about these flow states and about the idea of immersion. But the important thing, our job as game designers, is to steal time from our players. Really, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have our players become immersed within the tasks that they're doing, right? That's what our job is. Our job is really to have them move into these different immersion states or enter into the flow states and become lost within there. And you said like that, it doesn't sound like we're being very nice. But that's what we want to do, right? So we really have to concentrate on how we can help move our players through these different levels of immersion, how we can help our players maintain or remain within that flow channel. So there are a lot of things that can actually have an effect on a player's immersive level. And there's a lot of things that we can do to make sure that our players either remain within an immersive state or that they travel through the immersion states all the way into the total immersion at the end. It's been suggested that short bursts of stimuli can really help a player remain in an immersive state. They are concentrating on that next bit of stimuli. That's what they're looking for, that next stimuli. And if they're constantly looking for it and they're concentrating on that, then they're going to be moving through the immersion states. Varying the amount of time between. So if it's a pattern, let's say you've got a sound that's occurring and the players are listening for that sound. If it's a pattern, we can start to tune that pattern out. So you want to make sure that when you are keeping your players, when you're trying to keep them immersed, that you hit them at different times with stimuli. So they're not ready for it. They're looking for it. They're listening for it. Again, this is going to help draw them through. We don't want them to become accustomed to a particular amount. We want them to be always on the lookout for the next bit. Something else that can really affect immersion is emotion that's generated within the game itself. A player, if they genuinely feel for a character within a game, or they feel a genuine sense of accomplishment for completing a particular task, this in turn is going to affect their immersion levels. They're going to become more deeply immersed. There's a lot of other things that can do it as well. Long, dull periods in a game are going to have a very negative effect. This is going to cause us to move out of our immersive state. We're going to become bored with the game, and as soon as we become bored with the game, obviously we've lost our immersion. Too much stimuli is also a bad thing, right? As I've already mentioned, if we overwhelm the player with stimuli, or if they become particularly used to a pattern within the stimuli, they will start to ignore it. And once they've ignoring it, it's going to have a negative effect on immersion. There's a lot of different things that can also affect it. So level design. If you've got poor level design, if a level is difficult rather than challenging, our players are failing all the time and they just can't make that jump, for example, this is going to have a negative effect on immersion. We want to make sure that our players are being challenged, but it's not so difficult that they become upset with what they're doing, right? We want them to remain in our immersive state. Sounds or new visuals, again, this is something called spectacle. So spectacle itself can in turn affect immersion. Our players are excited to see this new sound or hear this new sound, excited to see this new visual. That's going to draw them deeper into immersion. Familiarity with a location or an emotional attachment to a particular character can again have a huge increase on immersion. If a character is playing a role-playing game, a player is playing a role-playing game, and their character returns back to a location that they are accustomed to, they might have that homey feeling. right? They might feel like, I'm coming home, and that's going to make them more immersed. Or having a beloved character that's with them, and starting dialogue with that particular beloved character. Again, they're going to be concentrating on that character. They want to converse with that character, or they want to see that character, and that's going to cause them to become more immersed. Narrative of some kind, again, an increase in immersion. Visual feedback, this is really an important one. Visual feedback, so letting our players know that they are accomplishing something is great for immersion, right? If our players they're doing stuff and they have no idea that they're actually accomplishing anything, it's going to have a negative effect on their immersion level. But by constantly giving our players visual feedback, not overwhelming them, but giving them good visual feedback, is going to cause them to become more immersed. And lastly, mastery of controls, or mastery of a situation, is also going to cause immersion. Understanding in depth how mechanics work and allowing our players to be experts in it and show off their amazing skills is going to allow our players to become more immersed within the game that they're playing. So, quick chart here. There's lots of stuff that can have a negative effect on immersion, and there's other things that can have a positive effect on immersion. Understanding what they are, and again, being able to use them in an appropriate way, is going to make sure that you're able to draw your players through their immersion levels. So, deep immersion can really warp a person's sense of time, right? They lose complete sense of time. They no longer have any idea of how much time has passed. It can allow players to completely ignore external stimuli. They can ignore their hunger pains. They can ignore someone shouting, "Come down for dinner! Stop playing that game! Come down for dinner!" Right? They can ignore that kind of stuff. They're not gonna answer you back. You're gonna ask someone a question, and they're not even gonna answer you back. I'm talking to you, my two young children. Anyway, so yeah, it can cause a player to completely ignore external stimuli. It can strengthen emotions. So if you are deeply immersed within a game, it can cause real world tears if your favorite character dies. People are heartbroken when their character dies, or when someone they consider to be their friend within a game dies. They can be heartbroken. This can cause real world emotions. It can cause interrupting a person who's in a deeply immersed state, can cause real world anger. Right? If someone's playing a game and they are concentrating on something, I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen, but I've had this happen where someone and I lash out. I'm playing a game, I'm trying to concentrate on doing something, and suddenly someone will ask me a question. My wife will ask me a question, whatever, and I die, and I get all upset, like, oh, I can't believe I just died. And that's not right. It's kind of sad that this is what our job is to cause fights between husband and wife, but that's what we do, right? This deep immersion levels, these deep immersion states, can cause resentment at being interrupted within a game. So, how are the flow states and immersion related? They kind of sound like similar ideas. One was from the 1970s, one was from 2004. But how are these kind of related? Let's take a look at that now. So, if we take a look at the original idea of the flow chart that we've got here, we talked about the idea of the flow channel. And basically what this is suggesting is that tasks within our game where the player ability matches the task, and they're going to remain immersed. They're going to remain within the flow channel, remain within these flow states, within these immersive states. A3 and A2 are either outside, above, or below the flow channel. And again, they're going to cause a loss of immersion. When our players are feeling anxiety because the level they're trying to move through is too difficult, they're going to lose immersion. If they become bored, there's long periods of boredom within the game, they're traveling with nothing happening within the game, then they're going to become bored and they're going to again lose immersion. It's only within the flow channel itself that the immersive states are maintained. So what Csikszentmihalyi has suggested is that there are several things that can ensure a player remains within the flow channel or within the flow state. Ensure that your players have concrete goals. They know exactly what they're trying to do. If they get confused about what they're trying to do within the game, they get lost, this breaks immersion. If they're suddenly thinking like, oh, I got to go look this up on the internet, then they're no longer going to be immersed within your game. They're not going to be within your flow channel anymore. So having concrete, understandable goals in your game goes a long way. You want to make sure, as we've discussed several times, that whatever goals or obstacles you've placed in front of your player, that they fit within the player's skill range, right? If they don't, if they're outside of the player's skill range, they're either going to become anxious or they're going to become bored. And again, this is going to destroy immersion levels. Feedback, something we already talked about as well. Giving your player timely feedback on their performance, helping them understand how far they've come towards accomplishing their particular goal, making them feel a sense of achievement are all ways of ensuring that they remain within the flow state and remain engaged. And finally, if we remove any kind of extra distractions from the game itself and allow them to concentrate on exactly what they're doing. So if they're concentrating on a particular task within the game, not having sudden pop-ups in the game, for example, informing them of something that has nothing to do with their current task, is going to aid in immersion. If they're concentrating on something and then all of a sudden something pops up on the screen that's nothing to do with their current task, maybe a character who's off to the side and gives a little quip or something like that kind of wrecks the moment for the player, they're going to lose their immersive state. So we want to make sure that we remove any of the extra distractions that might occur within the game itself and allow the player to concentrate on the particular task they're doing at the time. From Browns and Cairns, they were suggested that short bursts of stimuli are better than something that's long and continuous. A long continuous burst, a player can become used to it and they will start to ignore it. But having these little short bursts of stimuli, kind of at random times, as the next point suggests, varying the times between these random bursts, are going to ensure that your players are constantly searching for and looking for that next bit of stimuli. They're concentrating on the game, and that's exactly what we want to happen. Again, and the flow state itself, as I've already talked about a little tiny bit, the flow state itself is not just a continuous line. Having moments within the flow channel where the players are able to rest, but still remain at a point where their task and their abilities are within their means, will keep them within the flow channel. But you want the players to have a chance to rest. We don't want to have this constant struggle where our players are just maintaining a particular line and everything is always exactly the same. Ups and downs are going to help a long way. And that's exactly what this says. So allowing our players to rest between tasks, they'll be becoming bored, so it can't be too long, but allowing our players to rest between tasks is going to increase a player's immersion level. It gives them a chance, this rest period really gives them a chance to appreciate how much they've improved, right? Where they look at something and they think, the first time I fought this creature, it was so difficult, but now I can really kill it off. It's going to give them an appreciation on what they've accomplished so far, and it's another form of feedback, right? They understand that they have mastered these particular skills. Building skills up gradually instead of just instantly giving them skills, give them the ability to learn a skill over time. So the idea of teach, test, challenge, and we'll get into that later on as well in future videos, but teach, test, challenge. Don't just give them everything at once. Allow them to begin to gradually understand their skill until they improve to the point when they're experts at it. And again, this will keep them immersed, giving them little bits of information at a time. And again, in making sure that your player is constantly concentrating on what they're doing. If they are concentrating, if we're constantly keeping them on their toes, so they're looking for that next bit of stimuli, they're looking for that next bit of action, they're going to remain immersed within your game. All right, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I think this was a pretty long one. I think this was a pretty long video. My throat is sore from talking so much. I think it's time for a little break here. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know down below with a thumbs up. And if you didn't, a thumbs down is perfectly fine. These videos are for my students. That's what these videos are for. And you know what? If you're one of my students and you're watching this, I want to hear your feedback too. If you think I should be changing how I'm presenting these videos, let me know, guys. It's really important. These videos are asynchronous lecture points. It's what we're going to jump off for our synchronous lectures, where we're having synchronous discussions and we're diving deep into these ideas. This is just the surface, all right? Anyway, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.